I'd really like to celebrate these three powerhouse women who are really proactively taking steps, taking action to shift the dial for women. So please just encourage them. So let us just focus on getting to know our panellists a little bit more, and I'm just going to shimmy over here. Hopefully that's going. Perfect. So firstly, to know our panellists a little bit more, I've got an initial question for them. What superpower do you bring to the panel in your focus on shifting the dial for women? What is your story and why? Delwyn, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Tracy. Hi, everyone. I lead the YWCA, and that means that I get to work with just an amazingly diverse group of fabulous young women. And they have made me very aware of the privilege I have. And I think that that's my superpower. It's often we think about privilege as, oh, we should be embarrassed we've got privilege. But privilege is this amazing thing if you use it to help others. And I'm not afraid to stand up and speak truth to people who need to hear it. So I think that that's what I am able to contribute through programs like Mind the Gap and the work I do on the day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Delwyn. Emma.
Thanks, Tracy. Well, I'm a mum of 3 teenagers, so you will know what my superpower is. I've left them all at home foraging for breakfast, so here's hoping they get to school. I guess my superpower, my lived experience is a mum of 3. I'm a working parent, and I really care about this thing called the motherhood penalty. And, you know, I'm very inspired by the Te Ao Māori principle of be a good ancestor. And I want to smash the motherhood penalty so that our children and their children don't have to experience it. Because, you know, why is it that only mothers have their salary, their retirement savings and their future impacted when they become parents? And so my business, Works for Everyone, has been set up solely to provocate, to challenge that, to say, you know, where are the childcare solutions on site for parents? What support do you provide during school holidays? Where are the part-time senior jobs that enable you to build your career and not sidestep it? So I guess I'm really passionate about smashing the motherhood penalty. You have me to blame for that welcoming tune because I'm a Swiftie. I've seen Taylor Swift 6 times. And if we want to shift the dial for women, listen to more Taylor Swift. Tortured Poets Department, seriously. Couldn't play that, too many swear words. But yeah, that's my superpower.
There we go, in action already. Stephanie.
Good morning. So I started Crayon 5 years ago, or the journey towards Crayon 5 years ago, because even though I had worked in finance and studied finance, actually to quite a high degree, when I had my first child, there were just a lot of negative financial surprises around the corner. And we don't really talk about it. When you're pregnant, people tell you about prams, maybe childcare, maybe your return to work. Mostly not, but you definitely don't. We don't talk about money anyway, but we don't talk about it in the context of having a child. And I think in New Zealand, it's primarily primary carers who take the brunt of that, and 95% of primary carers are women. So, I think the superpower I bring is, we run, or we built and now run, the New Zealand Parental Leave Register. We have 260 verified employer parental leave policies. I've read a lot of policies. And I get to see across the board some of the really interesting things that employers are doing in this space. We also work directly with parents with financial coaching and education, so we get that on the ground view too. So we get both the 10,000-foot view and the day-to-day view of, when you have a child, what's the impact and what are the conversations that we're not having that we should be, particularly when it comes to retirement.
Great, thank you. So when we look at what the issues are for women, Stephanie, you've obviously set up the parental leave register. So just tell me about the issues that you see. I mean, one of them obviously being the lack of awareness around parental leave policies and just what people are entitled to, the impact of parental leave on women.
Yes, so it's quite a complicated piece of legislation to navigate, especially a lot of people have to go, it's Google or Facebook or what have you. And the reason we started it is we are seeing employers offer more in this space above the statutory entitlements. And just to give you some context, when you look at where New Zealand sits, when it comes to primary carer leave, we're in the bottom quartile amongst developed countries. We pay 26 weeks, but we pay it at less than full-time minimum wage. So it's equivalent to the average wage of about 13 weeks. The average across developed countries is about 39 weeks. When it comes to partner leave, we are one of 3 developed countries with no paid partner leave whatsoever. We are at the bottom of the table. So actually parents are not very well supported from a legislative perspective. A lot of people don't realise that until they fall pregnant, and then you've got to work it out for yourself. But also, if an employer does do more, it's an awkward question to ask about. If you're in a job interview, I think a lot of people would hesitate to, what is your policy? Or even in your current job, depending on the relationship you have with your manager, you may not be ready to flag that you're thinking about having a child in the next couple of years. So that's why we started the register. And we are seeing more employers do more, not just paid leave for both parents, but also around KiwiSaver, around how annual leave is treated, around the return to work, around what happens when things don't go to plan. And so it was really important to document that, but also to document what are the eligibility criteria to access those benefits. Do you need to be on a certain contract type, or how long do you need to have been, at the organisation for, etc. But when it comes to KiwiSaver specifically, we have, so of the 260 on the register, and they do cover 1 in every 6 employees in the country, so it's got pretty good coverage. A third actually will pay KiwiSaver contributions equivalent to what someone would have earned for the whole year. So we're seeing more employers recognise that KiwiSaver gender gap that you touched on at the beginning, and they're saying actually we want to be able to make contributions as if you had worked the whole year and you hadn't taken parental leave. So I think that's pretty amazing, and we're seeing more and more people do that. We also see a number, they're doing paid parental leave, so they pay KiwiSaver on that portion too. So I would say about 2/3 of the employers are giving some sort of extra contribution during that year of parental leave, and then the legislation is changing in July as well, which we can touch on a bit later.
Fabulous. It's interesting if I think back to when I was going on maternity leave some time ago now, there was no discussion at all. I mean, even I wouldn't have asked any questions. So, I mean, really raising the awareness is just very powerful, isn't it? Emma, smashing the motherhood penalty. Tell us about, the issues there.
Yeah, well, I just also want to acknowledge Stephanie's work. I do a lot of coaching, run a lot of workshops, and just the other day I had a client said to me, I found the parental leave register that Crayon did, and it's so good because now I don't have to sneak around asking questions. And I think that's one of the things is transparency is awesome at creating change. And so I want to thank Stephanie for that work. I think the motherhood penalty, and depending on what numbers you look at, up to 60% of your salary as a mother is penalised over 10 years and never really recovers. Fathers have a fatherhood bonus. It goes up once you become a parent. So what I'd like, and really why this happens, this is not a man and it's not a woman thing. This is a system we are all working in, and a system that doesn't value caregiving. And who does the majority of the caregiving? In the introduction, Tracy mentioned it. The lion's share of unpaid work in 2024 is still being carried out by women. And I think that if we don't change that, we can't change anything about women's place in the world. One of my clients said to me, she said, it's almost like Emma, women got the memo that they can break into the business world, but men haven't got the memo that they can break into the home. And I think, that's kind of true. In my work, what I see is a lot of women who, to Stephanie's point, when we become parents, you go on a 10-week course to learn how to give birth. That's the easy bit. It brings all sorts of pressures onto your relationship, what happens at home, who's taking leave when your child gets sick, and there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of high expectations. So I really work with clients to help them develop new skills. So one of the things I think that we can do to shift the dial for women is to have better conversations with your managers. A lot of my mums return to work on 4 days a week, so they're getting paid for 4 days, doing 5 days worth of outcomes. You know, and that just leads to burnout, because at home you're doing 60 hours of unpaid work as well. So have better conversations with your manager around, okay, I love being back at work, I'm working 4 days a week, how might we rescope this role so it can be delivered in 4 days a week? Full stop, silence. You know, I'm not saying these are easy questions, but we actually have to ask the hard questions in order to get change. We also have to have better conversations at home. And boy, this is hard. Because there are big beliefs around what a mum is and what a dad is. And it can lead to a lot of tension. I mean, the motherhood penalty, if you're losing 60% of your salary over 10 years, that's one thing if you're in a relationship. If you are parenting alone or your relationship ends, that is financially devastating. And better conversations at home around how we share the load. And not just the physical load, but the mental load. What are we going to do with the broccoli going off in the fridge? When's Mufti Day? Do you have a gold coin? Why can't our 10-year-old read? There's all these things that live in our head. When do early bird registrations for football close? And so I guess for me the work is, how do we share all that stuff out in a more equitable way? Because we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is working with parents and employers to see, you know, make space for dads. That's the work now, right? Make space for dads to ask for part-time work, to leave at 4 for pickups. Make space for dads to do the sick days when a child is sick. So many of my clients, they'll open up and they'll go, so my job's really flexible, but my husband's isn't. So it makes sense that I do all the work. And look, I get that, and I've been in a relationship like that. But if we keep having that as a narrative, nothing's going to change. So it's really about asking better questions, having better conversations, leaning into discomfort, not resentment, to quote Brené Brown. And, you know, that's the kind of work I do. It's the kind of work I'm passionate about.
Fabulous. I think that, you know, the conversation, as you say, is so important, and I think the support for change. And I think one of the other aspects too is us supporting each other and having those sort of conversations and you know, challenging even the sort of, you know, our own actions constantly. If I sort of pick up the volunteer work, we've been having lots of conversations about this recently. You know, we do all this work because we're absolutely passionate about it. We don't get paid for it. So we just continue this perpetual cycle. So, you know, at some point we've got to have that moment, that aha moment, hang on a minute, this quite isn't working for us. Great, where it's very heart-led, it's important stuff, but maybe we also need to be having the conversation, the open conversation about, hey, we need to be recognised and sort of paid for this. So I think that's sort of a similar sort of thought there too. Delwyn, pay gender gap, where do you start?
The pay gap, just following on from what has been said, I think often people aren't aware. They just don't know that, or they're not conscious that they're doing 60 hours of work at home as well. Or they don't know that women are paid less across the board in New Zealand. So there's just a big job to do, and getting that light bulb to come on in terms of, actually, you are carrying more load. You are being paid less. You are going to retire with less. And from that awareness, you can then start to build the change conversation. Our gender pay gap in New Zealand sits at 8.6% at the moment. It's hovered around 10% for a decade. We have one of the smallest average overall pay gaps in the OECD. And I think there's been a real complacency about, well, you know, it's we're doing quite well, and it's not really a big gap. But when you look at the intersections, going back to that word of intersectional feminism, so that's where gender plus race or gender plus disability or gender plus age, you can see a different story. So for our Māori and Pacific women, our pay gap's actually at 20%, not at 8.6%. And that is a huge, huge discount, and has an enormous roll-on impact in terms of what they are able to retire with. So there's an opportunity for quite significant change. When we started Mind the Gap, our goal was absolutely to get government to legislate, to put in place mandatory measuring and reporting of pay gaps, and that's public reporting, because transparency is your friend. And in business, what gets measured gets focused on. But we knew we ultimately didn't control the government, so we wanted to do some other things as we went through the campaign as well. And one of those was to bring business on board. Employers often don't know they've got pay gaps. Employers don't set out to have pay gaps. It is, as you said, it's the system. It's just the way things work. And when they can see that they've got a pay gap, many of them are horrified. And the good news is that they also control a lot of the levers to close the pay gap. So going through that process of getting businesses on board, helping them understand that the problem in their workplace and the tools they've got to change it had a huge impact. So we've got 110 organisations reporting the gender pay gap, and around 25% of those are also doing Māori or Pacific pay gap as well. And I've just done some analysis, so you're getting it hot off the press here. Of those that have now reported consecutive years, 80% of them have seen their pay gaps drop. So that's an incredible proof point for measuring and reporting and focusing on this can make a difference. And our numbers of organisations that are measuring and reporting on different ethnicity pay gaps has grown from 15% in August last year to 21% in April. So everybody tells me that measuring the ethnic pay gap is just too hard. Ethnicity is too hard. Actually, there's a whole lot of businesses doing this work. They've figured out how to do it. They may not be doing it perfectly, but they're doing it and they're starting to make a difference for people. So Mind the Gap didn't get the legislation that we wanted. The government didn't act as quickly as they had the opportunity to. And our coalition government is still obviously settling into its first budget and a whole lot of change. I'm still hopeful that we will get the legislation, but in the meantime, we can keep encouraging businesses to do it voluntarily, and we as employees can ask the questions. We can ask, what is our pay gap? And why don't we know that? Shouldn't we know that? So we all have a piece of that action, but it's about having the safety and the bravery to stand up and have those conversations.
Yes, I think that's a great question, to ask employers, in respect of, are we reporting and what is the gap? I think, are you seeing a more acceptance to consider the registering and sort of disclosing the pay gap, to taking the steps? I know that you've got a lot of resources on Mind the Gap sort of website, etc. So it's all there for people to sort of work their way through and to understand, etc. Are we actually making sort of, are more people looking at it?
Yes, the number is growing, but since the campaign came to its conclusion, that growth has slowed. And what we really need now is some more investment. If we're going to run a voluntary system, the system needs fuel. So we need some funding in order to put some arms and legs around it and get that momentum sped up again. But businesses are still coming to it.
Yeah. So, I think that's a good point, that if you are talking to your employer and they're really not sort of quite sure, there is a lot of wraparound support and resources available to sort of facilitate that sort of conversation. I think it's really important because we are really lagging behind, aren't we, in the world in respect of this reporting.
We are so far behind. All the countries we like to compare ourselves to, Canada, UK, South Africa, European countries, even the US, many of them have a compulsory measurement and reporting regime. Some of them, like in Australia, actually require action planning as well. We're a decade behind, and it's really, it's basic human rights. Women's rights are human rights. We're not getting paid fairly.
And I think there's the other sort of side of things. I mean, all of these sort of initiatives, the gender pay gap reporting, the parental leave sort of register, etc. It's all the right thing to sort of do. Why would you not want to report and sort of have information sort of that's available? And I think, for employers who want to retain staff, who want to be supporting their people, etc., these are some great steps that they can take to sort of actually walk the talk. So I think that there's a lot of good conversations that we can sort of take away to really try and drive some of these initiatives. Just picking up the point of sort of awareness, it was mentioned before of women that we really need to sort of, more of us need to appreciate the issues or keep them to the forefront of our minds. What are your thoughts there? I mean, I think that the one thing that I would say, women are not the problem. We are not the problem.
Yes, Queen.
It is a system, as you sort of said, Emma, sort of structurally. But how do we effectively raise the awareness, within women, within the community in general, without sort of this whole sounding like, oh, here they go again. It's just this talk fest. What do we do there?
Yeah, well, once you see it, the discrimination, you can't unsee it. So it's such a powerful thing to become aware of, and we just aren't aware of how much of our society is dominated by men being the majority. I think you were talking about My Kitchen Rules last night, and there being 7 male judges and one female judge. Once you kind of tune into that, you can see it, and you can help others to see it as well. So I guess it's about making it part of our day-to-day conversation, is noticing those things and raising them so that more people feel comfortable. We were incredibly successful at getting people to talk about pay gaps with Mind the Gap just by relentlessly being out there, having the conversation. And not being meek about that either. This is something that, our society changes all the time. This has to change.
Actually, it's interesting. I've got a 17-year-old daughter who's just come back from 10 days on the Spirit of Adventure. And, she's heard me talk about all the things that, we're all doing in this sort of space, and it's sort of like, oh, eyes roll, and here we go again, mum's on her sort of soapbox, etc. However, she came off the boat, and one of the things that I did chuckle about was that, oh, mum, you just don't appreciate the sexism on that boat, and the issues and the double standards, and, we got less to eat, and on it went. It was like, oh my God, it was like music to my ears. It's like, suddenly, hooray, and I think that just picks up that point about we do need to keep talking about these things, because it's that relentless discussion and then the actions, and it's incremental action that we sort of need. So I'm quite sort of heartened by that. So Emma, did you want to?
Oh, I was just going to build on what Dylan said and just say that I think that this is not a woman's problem to solve, and gender rebalancing is we need to welcome everyone, and I welcome all the men that are in the room, and I think we need to create spaces where everyone feels like we can contribute, because I think, I actually was in London earlier this year at some International Women's Day conferences, and there was a very big theme over there of men need to be involved in these conversations because they're part of the solution, and we risk isolating men when they're not here. And I think that's something that we really need to get our heads around. And I wonder even how we're framing it up, right? So if the question here is how do we shift the dial for women, if I quote Melinda Gates, and she said, when we lift women up, we lift up humanity. Maybe the question is, how do we shift the dial for humanity? Like when we put women at the centre of things. Rhea Hall's just done this beautiful 16-minute documentary about the state of Māori maternal health, and she says in that, if we look after the mothers, what would happen? And so I just wonder if we frame this up, and it's like, you know, when particularly from my lens of the world, when you talk about parents, that when men are more involved at home and not just taking kids to the playground or the zoo, but knowing when mufti day is, all that kind of stuff, and actually an active caregiver, better mental health, better families, better relationships. It's a win-win-win-win-win. And I think we just need to frame this up differently. We need to welcome men. We need to create spaces where we can have awkward conversations about this stuff, because it's hard. And to quote Glennon Doyle, we can do hard things. I quote everyone. Also, I forgot to mention daytime sequins are the way forward as well. Just letting you know. Sorry to interrupt. I'm not apologising though, actually, because women say sorry too much, but there we go.
Gorgeous. Stephanie, were you going to contribute to
I
it?
was going to add about having those conversations. So as part of our work at Crayon, we run a financial baby prep program. It's like antenatal class for your money. And I get to work directly with couples. Actually, about 80% of people come through with their partner. And we have a module on baby costs, you know, how much is the pram, et cetera, going to cost you. But we also talk about KiwiSaver as a hidden cost, something that you don't realise that you probably won't hit you for another 30 years. And and often I'll be having a conversation with a couple, and we've built some calculators. They're actually available freely on our website, so you can go in and punch in your salary and et cetera, and you can work out, parental leave, it's going to cost me X amount in KiwiSaver contributions, could be worth Y by retirement. Going back to work part-time rather than full-time for 5 years, that's going to cost me X amount in KiwiSaver contributions, could be worth this much at retirement. So they're actually freely available on our website for anyone to download. But I walk people through this, and the number of times they're like, I hadn't even thought about this, and then we'll have a conversation around, okay, so how about, is it feasible for you to have KiwiSaver contributions go to the primary carer from the family budget, or at least to meet the member tax credits? Or is it increasing your KiwiSaver contribution rate before you go on parental leave or after, but actually, or maybe you just say, look, we can't afford to do any of those things right now, but it's a conscious decision and it's a conversation you've had with your partner around what's going to happen. We've seen the numbers and the impact, how we're going to tackle this. And I think I've been encouraged by the number of times people weren't aware of it, but particularly for a heterosexual couple, for the guy to be like, we should be doing something. That should definitely be coming from the family budget. You know, you're taking the, one for the team by taking the bulk of the time off. Let's talk about what that contribution looks like. But I think a lot of the times people just aren't even aware of it, to your point, and having that very explicit conversation and making a conscious choice. And that choice might be, we can't do anything right now, but at least you're not going into it blind.
Yes, it's very, what's needed is a very inclusive conversation and a supportive one, because we are all in this together. And I think that's certainly, the male allyship, and great credit to the men in the room, is something that we really do want to build on. I mean, I think that, we've been talking about these sort of challenges for quite some time and sort of taking various action. And I'm sure, a lot of areas these days, not speaking for men, but, they probably feel a bit, this is a changing world. What's sort of going on? Where do I fit in this world? And I do think that men, just like women, need support. So we do need to come together. Men are very welcome to join Empower Women. It is an inclusive community. We need to have these conversations together, and I think that's a real focus that we will sort of take moving forward. And for the men in the room to be, I'd encourage you to have these conversations because we do need more of them. So look, we've sort of referred to some of the actions that we should sort of take, but let's just get really clear. I mean, what actions do you see that we need to take to shift the dial? Darwin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I just want to talk about allyship, I think, or flipping it over, inclusive leadership, real inclusive leadership. But on allyship, that it's not just male allies we need to be active allies for each other. When we see things that are discriminatory in our workplace and around pay, around just the gender norms that we all live within, we need to call them out and we need to stand up for each other. In New Zealand, we're actually not that great at doing that. We're quite passive as bystanders of discrimination. So I'd really encourage everybody to think about being more tuned in to what's going on in your team or in your workplace or what you're seeing, and actually speaking up, taking action.
Great. Emma?
I I toku that, speaking up, taking action, asking annoying questions. Ask annoying questions. Hi, where's our school holiday program? Say what they say. I mean, I think the actions here are one. I think there's like paid parental leave that Stephanie was talking about. I think there's a lot of private businesses that are now offering paid parental leave for both parents. And that is a potential game changer if both parents take it up. Because we know, if you're a parent, you will know that norms and that kind of stuff are set up right from the start. And so we really want both parents to be equitable parents at home. And I think paid parental leave provides that opportunity right from the start for family dynamics to change. Because if you've been the one home on parental leave for 8 months, 6 months, and then you go back to work and you've kind of been doing all of this work at home, what happens to this work? Unless there are conversations, there's a big risk that you continue doing it. And so if that work can be, when you're sole charge at home, right, with 3 children under 5, you know why you don't leave the house without wipes, because it happens and you know. So I think paid parental leave is really important. I think, again, this unpaid work that people are doing at home, making space for dads. So one action I always recommend is dads as the primary contact on the daycare form or on the school enrolment form or on the medical centre form, so that dads get the call first. Dads on WhatsApp group for soccer pickups. I think we need to spread this load out. Make space for dads, because you know what? The dads I work with, they want to be involved, but it's tricky. They feel they don't do it right. It brings tension into the relationship, but make space for these vulnerable conversations, because literally, I know I bang on it about a lot, but if men can't take their place at home, women will never take their place in the world, because we're doing so much. And it's 2024, and I work with women and mums and dads across industries. New Zealand Defence Force, ANZ, BNZ, Chorus, One New Zealand. And the themes are all the same. I work globally for Fonterra. Themes are all the same. Women continue to do more at home. So I think welcoming men, sitting down and having conversations around what's on the family's mental load this week, changing our language, not talking about helping at home. How will we do this work together? I think it's really important, and I think it's something that has just got so many jackpot wins when we make space for dads, and that's what I see as the big opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great messages there, and I think it's just getting them across consistently.
And it's cultural as well, right? So I work with a dad who is a general counsel for a very large New Zealand organisation, and he had a conversation with his manager to say, hey, can I leave at 4 o'clock 3 days a week to pick my kids up? And that manager said, yep, no problems. So then the manager was left, and he got a new manager. And look, this guy is really senior, right? And he was kind of like, didn't really want to bring the 4 o'clock thing up. And so now, this has changed, but this is the story he told me. He said, so really what I do, Emma, is I just leave via a different corridor. And this is what I mean by the cultural, it feels so risky for him to leave at 4. And welcome to my world. And I just think we need to have these conversations. We need to talk about it, because he wants to take his place at home. But for some reason, culturally, he's getting these messages. It's like my mums who will leave a jacket on their chair when they leave. So they could be here, or they might not be here. Do you know what I mean? Or shoes under the desk. So I think hybrid working is another interesting thing, right? Because who's doing the hybrid working? Because it really, and a lot of people are being asked back to the office as well now. That's really tricky. I've had parents on the phone, mums crying I don't have childcare. I can't afford it. There's no places. I mean, we don't lead the world in pay gaps, but we lead the world in childcare costs.
Number one.
Yeah, number one. And I just think, this is a system again. But look, just ask annoying questions. Say to your employer, what help do you provide for childcare costs? In America, America's parental leave policy is terrible, but some of their big companies provide things like night nannies. Who would like a night nanny? Someone who gets up to your child during the night. They obviously just want you to work during the day. It's self-serving. But, I think we've got to think innovatively about these solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was also going to say ask curious questions, because the number of times I'll speak to very large organisations and they've rolled out their first parental leave policy because an employee was like, oh, I'm pregnant, what do we offer here? Yeah. And then, oh, well, nothing, we better look at, and sometimes it's not as easy as that, but I think if enough people ask, and you can ask politely, they'll start to think, oh, this is a thing we need to address. And so ask of your employer. It could also be of people in your life. If you've got a friend who's expecting, I guess I look at it from a parental leave perspective, but it's, what are you going to do about your KiwiSaver? Or have you thought about this? Or just prompting the thought. And I touched on it earlier, but from the 1st of July this year, the government will start making the equivalent of employer contributions on government paid parental leave. At least it was, I don't know if it's quite come into action yet, but it's what's been promised. And so in the last budget, unlike being an employee where KiwiSaver is the default for paid parental leave is that KiwiSaver is not deducted, and 85% of people don't have it come out of their paid parental leave. So it might just be, letting someone know that, oh, you're pregnant. Did you know that KiwiSaver's now going to be paid on paid parental leave? That's a new thing. But you've got to opt in. If you don't opt in, you don't get it. So again, it's just having those gentle conversations, even with people in your everyday life, to make them just prompt the thought.
I do think questions can change things. Again, Stephanie's parental leave register, I bet you when she sent the email out to all these companies, like, hi, I'm putting together a list of parental leave policies, quite a lot of people leaned out into the hall and went, have we got a parental leave policy? And I mean, I've just launched a thing called the Part-Time Power List for New Zealand, which is the very first list that's going to report on positions of power that are being carried out in part-time or job share roles. Because I think that's the kind of list we need to celebrate, not the rich list or the fastest growing company list. And same thing, what I'm experiencing is people going, oh, great idea. Where are our part-time general manager roles? Where are our job shares? And, because so many of my clients are like, oh, Emma, I'm so lucky. They let me work 4 days a week. Why do we have to be lucky? Right? I'm so lucky I've got a good husband. Why do we have to be lucky? I'm going to write a book called I'm Lucky.
Can I just...
So Emma, just on that on that part-time power list, so just nominations are still, let's get some detail, please.
So nominations for the New Zealand part-time power list are open till the end of May. If you go to worksforeveryone.co.nz or come and see me afterwards, I can send you the link to the nomination form. It's very simple. It's not an awards thing. It's just really, you know what? You can't be what you can't see. And I want to recognise and celebrate employers that are creating work that enable anyone who has other stuff going on in their life to continue to build their career. I paid the motherhood penalty. I had to come out of the workforce because I didn't have any other choices. There were no choices for me to build my career at a GM level, part-time, while being the lead caregiver for 3 kids. I couldn't do it. I had run it. People say it was my choice. I'd run out of choices. It's especially when you overlay stuff like medical needs and learning needs and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's open. Come and see me. Go on to worksforeveryone.co.nz. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And I really want this to shine a light on the fact that, because a lot of my clients, especially senior professional women, are often married to senior professional men. Now, raising 3 children together, 2 children, 1 child, it's a lot. The woman will be the one that will stop working. I don't want that. because the leadership we need is female. So I want to do this. I want to shine a light on senior, powerful part-time roles.
Can I just add to that one of the other big impacts that's at the other end of life for women is menopause. And workplaces, I think a theme here is that our workplaces really need to change. But women, there's no support for women having menopause, so women opt out. And that means less earnings for them, less KiwiSaver contributions. And we need to change the world of work to do that. Tracy mentioned a menopause toolkit that we're happy to give away. It's for organisations in order to change their policy framework, their leader training, all of the aspects in a workplace that means that for anyone going through menopause, they will have an environment where they can get the support they need to keep working, but also to cope with the impacts that they're incurring.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it, that we're now talking about menopause. I mean, it's biggest belief it's taken so long, but there is so much there, and I think there's some great things. I mean, there is nothing. We've got nothing to lose by asking the curious questions, but yet there is that resistance to asking questions, and I can certainly relate to leaving my jacket on the chair in the office many times in my early career. That
Free
I
the
couldn't be
jackets.
seen.
Take them with you. Leave loudly.
Exactly. But look, we've talked about a lot of roads lead back to the employer. The employer, being more transparent with regard to pay gaps, registering, disclosing with regard to parental leave policies, etc. How do we support the employers to make the change? I know in relation to retirement commissions, KiwiSaver contribution gap research, Jane's called for employers to get a bit more proactive and increase their contributions. I mean, how do we support employers to make all of this change, and particularly in, let's say, difficult economic times? And I know, Stephanie, I saw a post you'd referred to a US study that was really sort of showing during hard times, actually, women can suffer through employers making different changes because it's more expensive to pay parental leave, etc. I mean, do you have any thoughts around that?
I guess I would say it's incremental. Even the employers who have the best parental leave policies in market, they didn't start there. They might have started with, and there's a misconception that the only employers who come on the register are the ones with the flashiest policies. We certainly do have them, and that's amazing what they're doing. But we have employers who offer the statutory entitlements and are still on the register to be transparent. We have some offering 2 weeks of paid leave, or etc. I think it's about, okay, we just need to start, and we'll roll something out, and we'll get some feedback, and we'll test it, and when things change, we can build on it, etc. I think that's probably one thing. And certainly when you talk to employees, most of them are not asking for the sun, the stars, and the moon. Like, there are some quite reasonable expectations out there. So it is really starting, and I think ideally you want to be rolling it out for both parents. So you touched on that research that came out of the US. It basically said because women are more likely to take time off work to have a child, employers in tough economic times are less likely to hire them and invest in them. But if you have what we call an equal paid parental leave policy, which I know Delwyn's team at Gender at Work advocates a lot for, then if you've got a male and female candidate, they will be equally likely to take time off work, and therefore I think it takes some of that bite off from a discrimination perspective or an unconscious bias perspective. So certainly thinking around, keeping in mind New Zealand partners don't get anything under the legislation anyway, can you roll out a policy that perhaps gives something to both parents?
I think there's myths that we can bust as well for employers. So in the pay gap space, there was this sense that if they put their pay gaps out there and they weren't big, that they would be punished. And actually, we're living in a time when transparency is really valued. So we haven't had a business. Even one of our early ones, Westpac, 30% gender pay gap. They weren't punished by their staff for putting that out there, because they put it out there and said, here's what we're going to do to change this. Will it cost me a lot more? Well, actually, what we've seen overseas is that it's about rebalancing your salary spend, not about increasing the salary spend. So you may have a couple of years where the men in your organisation get less in their pay rises than the women do, but overall it works in the financial system of the organisation. So myth busting, and there's a lot of this on the Mind the Gap website, is really useful for taking the temperature down for businesses to go, we can do this. We can do this.
It's also about reframing it as an investment. You know, if you invest in someone to take time off for a big life change and they come back more engaged, and you know, it's a chance to build very, very deep loyalty. So there was a survey done by mBorder about the employee life cycle, and parental leave was the number one most challenging moment, the number one moment that employees felt the most vulnerable, the number one moment where extra help or support would have been most meaningful, and the second least supported moment, the first least supported moment being offboarding. So that's a really low benchmark. And if you think, actually, this is an opportunity to retain great talent, and if they leave, it's actually going to cost me somewhere between 50 to 200% of their salary to replace them. I think if you reframe it as an investment rather than a cost, that's another way of looking at it.
And that's a great intro to how businesses could use me. No, so I do think returning to work after you've become a parent is a transformational time in your life. Some companies have transformation departments, but they've got nothing on this. Because you have all these questions of identity that shoot up. Who even am I? I used to like my job, and I don't know if I do anymore. I'm completely sleep deprived. I'm now come back on 4 days. I've been sidelined. I'm on the B team, not getting any of the juicy projects anymore. Do I even want to work? I've left my kid, he's crying at the gate. Am I a bad mother? All these kind of questions. And then you arrive at work and get some coffee. And I think, so what I do with Return to Work programs is I run a whole lot of workshops to help parents with confidence, to help them with setting and managing boundaries, saying no. Because if you were bad at saying no before you became a parent, it's going to get amplified when you do. Getting in the driver's seat of your career. Investing in your parents, just because you're a parent doesn't mean you don't have your ambition anymore. And helping them to share the load at home. Because again, where do we learn this stuff? So I think, what I'm finding with a lot of my big clients is the clients that can't afford right now to put a whole lot of money into paid parental leave can afford to do some return to work programs to wrap a care wrap around their people at one of the hardest times in your life. You're sleep deprived, you're waiting for the call from daycare to say, come and pick them up. You drop them off with the temperature, he's fine.
Not so easy these days.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think, supporting people at really vulnerable times, helping them to stay their course, because goodness, it's hard working and having a family. I know that. And I think we need to help people out a bit.
Fabulous. Well, look, before we put the audience to work, what is your one recommendation as to an action that everyone can take away today to shift the dial? Who's going to start?
Stephanie.
Just ask the question. Ask one question today.
Perfect.
Yeah. The one thing I think everyone in this room could do is ask, if you are parenting with someone else, just have a think. How does our family work? How equitable is it? And what stories have I been telling myself about that?
Great. Darwin?
Yeah, I'd probably add the home lens into it. So maybe think about some of these things in your home environment and have a conversation with your partner.
Fabulous. Well, look, we'd really like to get your thoughts. There's been some great discussion. I'm sure the cogs have been turning. We've got the Slido link or code, whatever you call it these days. If you aren't connected in there, please do so. And we'd really like you to, if you just turn to the polls tab and just share what you believe the actions could be to shift the dial, and then we'll collate those in it's called a mind cloud, and we'll be feeding them back. We'll be feeding them back to Jane, and we'll be looking to take these actions and really sort of work some initiatives up around them.
Yeah.
So, and then we will also, now Prue, where's Prue? Prue's going to come up here and facilitate this. We'll follow the Mind Cloud with a Q&A session to the panellists after, and we've also got our menopause toolkit to be given out.
Hey everyone. I just thought maybe we start, well, as everyone's putting their ideas into the polls tab, maybe we start with some of these questions because we've got loads. So actually just the one that Darwin actually touched on is obviously the toolkit that's going to be given today. There's quite a few questions about menopause and perimenopause affecting the gender pay gap. Have you guys done a bit of work on that, Darwin?
Yes, it definitely affects the gender pay gap because you've got senior women who are very experienced in the workplace opting out. So in terms of the law of averages, that really brings down your pay gap. And you need to retain those women, not just because it's the right thing to do as a human to support people through this, but you also keep that experience and that wisdom and those skills in your business. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. We've talked about making space for dads and how to involve men in this conversation. Can you discuss the situation for woman-woman couples? And can we also talk about single families? Yeah, single parents.
Yep. So when I work with families that have in a same-sex relationship, what I find, and I also have not seen any research on this, is that the load is very equitable split, whether that is 2 guys or 2 girls. So I find that really curious, that there are better conversations that are happening in those kind of relationships. I think for those parenting alone, boy, this is hard. I think what I see is when you are parenting alone, you need to get really good at asking for help and accepting help, which can be really, really tricky. But also, I think it's about reimagining our communities. So again, this documentary I saw yesterday that Ria Hall has contributed to, she says, I think she's a single mama of 3, and she said, we need to kind of go back to life on the pa, right? Where the whole village is raising our children. And I think that we're so far away from that now, but this is so hard when you are parenting alone. But the parents that I work with who are parenting alone, asking for help, being really honest with what you need from work, finding great people leaders who can support that. But I just want to say that if you are parenting alone, it is brutal. And because we live in a system that doesn't value caregiving, and I don't know what to say about that. Yeah.
Thanks, Emma. This one's a really interesting one, and it's something that I've thought about quite a lot, and actually Tanya Demet's got some really good ideas on this. It's saying part-time senior jobs are hard to find regardless of gender. I'm talking about the revenue generating ones in particular. Is energy better directed at supporting mums to build contracting or entrepreneurial skills? So this is kind of a bit dear to my heart with Shift and actually what I've seen.
So what do you think the answer is?
Well, I think it's a bit of both because I don't think we want to lose all the women, and I think I look at a lot of my friends and the mums in the school, and they are so entrepreneurial and innovative, the way they create these businesses around school hours. I just feel like there's a lot of there's just amazing entrepreneurs actually out there saying, well, it doesn't work for me going into a big corporate 5 days a week, but actually I can do this and contract around. But also that still doesn't address the load. I still see them at school pick up at 3. So that's the tricky piece, is these portfolio careers don't necessarily solve the problem. But I'll throw it to you guys.
Yeah, you need both because we need to cope in life. But if we don't push and demand that with the workplace system changes, it will never change.
Yeah, and I mean, look, this is my second career. What's my second innings, as I heard someone say. I worked in corporates for 25 years. I worked for large businesses in New Zealand and in the UK. They can do part-time senior work. That is not. It's hard. I know it's hard. What we're doing currently is hard as well. I think we need both. I think the reason why I believe part-time work in a large business at a senior level is really important is it's the large businesses that can try to change the system. And if you get people up there, and also I want to acknowledge, this is part-time work for any gender. Yes. We need this for everyone. And we need it for people that are in menopause, want to hold on to their career, but, are having major problems. Like, where are the options for this? We have HR awards. There may be some people here who are involved in HR New Zealand awards. Where is the innovation in HR? Where is the innovation in job design?
And the funny thing is, there's like departments in these big corporates that just do it really well.
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
I mean, I could just reel off the legal departments I know that have got 14 women all job sharing. It's like it's a logistical nightmare, but it's actually awesome
Yep.
because those women aren't going to go anywhere, and they will scale back at some point. Some of
Yep.
them won't, but they're just awesome.
Yeah.
There's actually case studies in these places that are doing it.
Awesome.
Yeah. There's a question for Dalwan. There are no NGO employers on the register. What work is happening to mobilise the community services sector to participate?
Yes, we did, through the Mind the Gap process, engage with the NGO sector. I think we came very close to get the Auckland City Mission on board. One of the things about the process that we went through was to focus on the larger end of businesses, and a lot of NGOs, not all, but a lot of NGOs are at the smaller end. People who work in small organisations deserve the same consideration as big organisations, but that was just where our focus was. But that difference is why we need legislation. We all need to be working to the same play sheet.
Yeah. My husband is the primary contact for GP, preschool and school. I still get called first by all three. How do we change the system?
Lol. I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is,
Take your number off. Proactively remove
change your number.
number.
Block those people. No, it's a great question, because persistent, stubborn, gendered caregiving norms. That's what we need to smash.
Yeah, call mum. Call the mum. Talk to the mum.
Yeah. Tell your mum we need a cake tomorrow.
I've got. Should there be? This is a bit one for you, Tracy, and I guess as well, an Empower Women working group. Should there be more men in the Empower Women leadership, and if they are part of the solution, a campaign aimed at men?
Oh my God, absolutely.
Yes.
It's really hard. I know we were very much involved in leading the It Starts With Action campaign with FSC and Retirement Commission a year or so ago, and we go to great lengths to ensure that the conversations and events are inclusive. And we had one recently at the FSC conference, and it was around women being a powerful consumer segment, and what women wanted, and how providers could actually understand that and link in for the betterment of their products and businesses and whatever, which made great sense to us. We thought we were going to have the room full, packed with both genders, but sadly we had two men. I think they missed the memo.
What we've been doing at events is running them as BYO man. So every woman who comes brings a man from their workplace, and actually it's working really well.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we're sort of thinking, those other things. But the other thing is that we were sort of, certainly personally, I was starting to feel bad about that. We were the problem. It was a failure on our part. And, having a strident discussion with someone, it's like, we've got to stop being so apologetic. We can do what we can do. We can open the door. We can put the invite out. Absolutely get creative in our sort of thinking. Absolutely agree with that. But, it is a two-way game. Men do need to come into the conversation. But I think that's something that very much Empower Women is going to be focused on.
Yeah. No, awesome. I think we're getting close to time, so maybe we'll jump into the polls with the actions that people have added. And how do I find those?
I think our tech people are going to put that up. Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah. So are these the words that people are adding? I say everyone's adding them.
Yeah.
Tax families, not individuals. Awesome. So can you guys see all these? I guess, what's TFR on job ads? What does that mean? I don't actually know.
Don't know, actually.
No, neither do I.
I don't know.
Oh, remuneration.
Putting the salary on,
yeah.
on job ads is powerful.
Yeah, transparent mental load, awesome. There's actually quite a few AI apps that are coming out at the moment just talking about the sharing the mental load at home. Have you seen, there's like 2 or 3 where you're actually, it's kind of scanning all of your apps and your WhatsApp groups and your Teams reach and all of the things that you're doing and putting it in. So it is kind of, as the 2 of you are sharing it.
I mean, transparent mental load, just a little resource recommendation. There is a very cool book called Fair Play, which an American woman called Eve Rodsky wrote, and she talks about the mental load as being invisible, and she said you need to make it visible to have value, right? Because when it lives in your head, it has no value. So she recommends, not AI, but like old school, whiteboard, go down to Kmart, put the kids in bed, go down to Kmart. You love that action, don't you? And get a whiteboard, put it on your fridge, write down the mental load every week, have a meeting if you are parenting with someone else. How will we do this week? You know, when you make the mental load visible, it provides value and it really helps anyone else who's parenting in your house to own stuff. So yeah, that's a little hint.
Nice. Yeah, my husband and I do that as well, and he still gets the texts all day. Birthday present. I really like the part-time career paths as well, part-time career progression actually, in the senior part-time roles is just such a big one. Senior women leaders, but senior women leaders who are part-time and doing it differently, I think is what we need to see is gain, you know, the old see it to be it. I do think that's a really important one, but seeing it and being it in a different way that actually gives permission to others in that workplace to do it differently too.
I love that we've got Women Let Go up there too, because sometimes we're reluctant to let our motherhood badge get a bit dusty, and we do need to let go.
Just jumping back to the questions, but this is a really interesting that women are often the harshest critics. Older women think they've battled through it and are proud of their battle scars rather than lifting others up.
Yeah, I have seen that, and I just go to compassion with that, because I don't want to bring the patriarchy word out, but I mean, that's how they've had to be, Bubs, and I think we need to have compassion for that because it can't be the way we move forward. And
they have the power to start to change the system.
Yeah. I see it with parental leave sometimes. I made it through and I didn't get anything from the government, so toughen up.
Yeah. Darwin, I might pass to you in terms of your the action that you think is worthy of your menopause toolkit, or are we going to do that afterwards?
I would actually be interested to give it to the person who had the question around same-sex parents. Yeah. Because that is a really, you know, thinking beyond the binary in terms of gender and the impacts of that is a really important thing for us to be doing. Whether it's appropriate for you or not, I don't know, but happy to have that discussion. Do we know who that was?
They're anonymous, but I can do it after we get up.
Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic.
awesome. Okay.
We will track you down.
We'll track you down. Awesome. We've only got we've got 5 seconds, so we need to I've just seen the timing. Hey, thank you just so much, Darwin, Emma, and Stephanie, for all of your work. I think you're just 3 exemplars of actually action, and that's kind of what this is all about. Like what you guys are doing, just so brilliant and so inspired by all 3 of you. So just thank you for your work. And Tracy, and to all of the Empower Women here, welcome. Thank you for coming to our first event, and thank you to the Retirement Commission for having us at your amazing conference, Jane and team. I think there's one last slide, actually, just a little plug on how to join Empower Women. Is that right? I'm not sure. Yes. Oh, do you know? Yeah, thank you. But yeah, and please just do think about those actions that we've just talked about, that the 3 panellists talked about. Chat to your husbands, question at work. One of the questions was about being the person who creates trouble at work and how do you manage that. Do it. There's a lot of, the workplace has got a lot of other women who are thinking exactly the same thing, so you do it, you're taking one for the team.
Yes, I think, race home, put a bit of Taylor Swift on, and just focus on how you're going to create a bit of trouble.
Yeah. Awesome. So here we go. So we've got, if you go to FSC, there's this link here. If you actually it's quite easy to just Google it actually. If you see an Empower Woman, it'll come up if you can't find it.
Yeah, look, we would love to have you spread the word. This is about coming together to make impactful change, but to continue to discuss the issues as much as we need to make that impactful change happen, and an absolutely inclusive community. So
Taking on board the men, we're getting that loud and clear, and we get it too for the next few events. So thank you. Thanks everyone for coming, and
Thank
thanks
you.
again to the panellists.
Kia ora.